Right, y'all, welcome back to Commodore Arms channel. Okay, so today we have a very cool video. We are doing an interview with Andre from the 3rd Assault Brigade out of Ukraine. Now, if you guys are familiar with the combat footage reactions that I've been doing, a lot of that is from the 3rd Assault Brigade. So they have been staying very, very busy, giving the Russians a hard time. And yeah, we get to talk with one of the members, a platoon commander, as far as I understand it, from the 3rd Assault Brigade, and it's going to be a very, very good time. I mean, we're going to be talking about like kind of his background, but also kind of going more into what we've been seeing from the videos themselves and just the overall kind of experience that he's been having and that the Ukrainians are having with this war. So I think it's going to be pretty eye-opening. And again, I'm honored to be able to kind of sit down and chat with one of these badass fighters that we've been checking out. I'm going to try not to get too starstruck, but again, it is going to be pretty freaking cool. But yeah, here is that interview. Let me know what you guys think. Well, hey, I just want to say, just like on behalf of everybody else who's watching who can't actually say this, thank you guys for doing what you're doing. Like you guys are badass. It motivates me. I've been infantry for 7 years. And seeing that shit is awesome. Like knowing that the Russians can't just go and start invading all these countries without the amount of pushback and badasses fighting back, like it's good. The world definitely needs that. So thank you guys for that.
Thanks you too for support. Also, I have a badge from another American friend. He's a volunteer here, so I use it now. And I have this thing. It writes from soldier to soldier. It's from. It's from American Airborne, and they gave me too about a year ago. So I feel its support really.
Nice.
So,
yeah, there's a troops that are actually out there giving that stuff to you, or are they sending it out?
As I know, they collect money for Ukraine, selling these things, and then they send it to us.
Okay, that's awesome. Good deal. Cool. Yeah. Well, I guess before we get into everything, it'd be good to kind of understand your background a little bit, just so we can kind of see where you came from, better understand your perspective. So I guess like, who are you, and where are you from, and also what unit are you in right now?
So my name is Andrei. In English, it sounds like Andrew, kind of it. I'm 25. And I started my military career, if I can say so, when I was 15 years old, and I get into military school. But this military school was just in Donbas region in Donetsk. So the war spoiled me the whole studying, and in 14 years, I should to move from there to another city and then graduate from school. After the school, I go to university, but I understood that this is not the thing I want to do in my life. So I moved from there to the army, and I get to the airborne military in 2017. Damn. I served there about 3 years, and after this I have a year or year and a half of a rest, and then it comes this war. They invade Ukraine of full their military, and I came here to our brigade. This is the 3rd Assault Brigade, and now I'm on position of commander of platoon. Actually, I'm sergeant, and under my rule I have about 30 people. So this is it.
Okay, good deal. So you've kind of had like a pretty extensive military background. I think of, when I think of like Ukrainian troops, I think a lot of them who are having to get called up and volunteer for this war. But I understand, of course, there's going to be a lot of people who have been serving or have that experience. And of course, it's going to be pretty valuable. I mean, you're a platoon commander. That makes a lot of sense, especially with your experience. But 30 people, that's a lot to be in charge of when you said you're 25. Like,
we have a very fast career growing here, because you need people every time. Some of us get injured or other things. Some of us died. So we every time we have more new people. They need to study, and the old ones grows up to another positions and becoming commanders. Actually, I'm not the oldest commander. We have even younger, even more
Really?
young. Yeah,
Jeez
since
Louise.
17 year. Even I know one guy who came to us when he was 17, and now he's 19, as I remember.
Wow. Yeah. So I guess just for reference or comparison, I'm 29 right now. I've been in for about 11 years, but even when I was 25, the most people I was in charge of was maybe like 13, 14. But 30 in combat operations makes a very big difference. Um, I, I, I know with civilians, they don't necessarily understand how quick military is with actually maturing, but like you're you're probably a pretty good example. Like you're in charge of 30 people as a 25-year-old, and that's like when a lot of people are kind of like getting out of college and trying to find their own sort of careers. So that's pretty impressive, dude. Okay, so platoon commander, as far as like I kind of understand the general organization of the 3rd Assault Brigade. Looking at it, there were a lot more battalions than I kind of thought originally. So with our brigade, we might have like 5 battalions, but as I understand it, you guys have, I think maybe 8, and then also a few different companies on top of that as well. With that, do you have like a specific specialty in the brigade, like light infantry or mechanized infantry? How does it work as a platoon commander in your particular battalion?
You're absolutely right. We have mechanized infantry battalions, we have storm battalions, we have like sniper divisions and artillery and kind of this thing. I'm a commander of storm platoon, of storm company, of storm battalion. So
Okay.
this is more specific. We sometimes we sit in the trenches for a long time, changing ourselves, but mostly we just storming. Not so often like mechanized infantry, just sitting in trenches all the day, all the weeks. But
Okay.
storm, it's much more harder. In my opinion, the storm specialization is the most dangerous and the most war itself.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people are getting their exposure, especially with the 3rd Assault Brigade, is seeing like the actual operations or missions that you guys are running. And again, it's pretty mind-boggling to be seeing all this, not only with all the different cameras, but just this modern peer-to-peer conflict. To be in that sort of elements that's responsible for, storming these trenches, for holding the trenches, like it's pretty mind-boggling to see. We study trench clearing operations and we train them, but in how we're seeing it now, there's a mix of, conventional tactics, trench clearing tactics, but also like just the urban setting. It's very new for us, at least like as an American infantry, to observe all of this. So it must be pretty difficult. Did you guys have like any sort of training set up beforehand to kind of prepare you for these trench operations? Or did you kind of have to learn that these trenches were a necessity and kind of just adapt your tactics off of that?
Yeah, for 100%, you're right. We use the experience of ourselves. It helps the most. Also, we use the enemy's tactics, and also we use the NATO system. We try to combine these 3 elements and making our own system of training. And mostly it depends on the experience of old soldiers who can train and teach the new guys. And actually, every battle is different, but they have similar things in each of them. So,
Right.
but before the operation, when we have some information, we're trying to make a practice training which will look similar to the place we will operate. So we're
Okay.
trying to find the same or just similar trenches, the same wood line or our other landscape thing, and
Okay.
train. Yeah, it helps to. Also, we get this thing from NATO system. As I heard, American operation built like this before. In past, I know they train the same villages, the same cities before the real operation, and then do it. So we
Right.
copy this and use it, and it helps.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the
No
most
doubt.
important thing is that commander in the battle should be should be quickly thinking man, because the action goes too fast. You should operate and orientate in any small things and make your decisions very quickly. Because yeah, as you said, it's like a combined war with the conventional war, or like we use artillery, tanks, and we use infantry. We have cleaning up operations in the woodlands, cities. It's all the things you can imagine within trenches, for example, in one fight. So you should prepare to everything, and experience helps. Also, I want to say that the very important thing is to be mentally prepared and strong moral, because often these things is much more important than weapon, because the strong weapon can be strong only in a strong man arms. So we teach our soldiers how to fight with their fear, how to explain yourself why you should do this thing, and no step back, only forward, other things.
Okay. No, that's actually really important. As far as like that combat mindset, that's not really something that's taught too much. Like in the Marine Corps, you'll have certain phrases to kind of keep the aggression up, like especially when we're in training, teaching the machine gunners to say, die, motherfucker, die, to kind of understand how long they need to be holding the trigger back. There's things like that just to kind of help with the aggression. But as far as like what you're saying with the morals, that's not something that's like it's not focused on too much. And especially when you have, you know, an adversary that doesn't necessarily have the highest morals, it's a lot harder on you to sort of hold that high ground, especially with all the stuff that you're seeing and all the stuff that you're having to adapt to. Like it really does take a very competent, very mature, capable leader to be able to kind of understand himself, but also kind of influence his soldiers so they understand that too. Now, as far as like all the different operations that you're saying, I definitely agree. Rehearsals are super important. And I know you guys have, you know, the drones, and that can kind of help with the reconnaissance as far as understanding the layouts. Just in general, intelligence is very helpful when it comes to kind of rehearsals. But like you're saying, it's really crucial to have good NCOs, good leaders to be able to kind of adapt to anything. Because we have a saying that the plan only survives until contact is made. And once you actually make contact with the enemy, at that point, a lot of it is just going to be that leader kind of assessing the situation really quick and taking it from there. So that's something that's instilled, but I really like how you're saying that sort of statement about the morals. It's pretty important. So as far as what we've been seeing with the different sorts of operations, you were saying there's trenches, there's open areas, there's urban terrain, buildings. What have you guys had the most, I guess, stress with? Like what would you say is the most difficult sort of terrain to attack, whether it be, you know, trenches or buildings?
Mm-hmm. Every battle is difficult but different. For example, you saw the video when we storming trenches. It was very difficult by physically, because it was exhausting. So many kilometers you should go forward, and then maybe you can evacuate your friend back the same count of kilometers in this mud, in this corpse lying in the ground, and under artillery fire. So physically, it was the most exhausted fight in our career, I think. But we have another kind of fights. For example, I've been to Bakhmut when it was almost all free, and we were sitting in the building, and then under the ground, under the building, we have like basement for workers. There are tubes with water and other things, and the enemy shooting in this building all the time using tanks and other artillery systems, and we lived there with dogs, with cats. They just crashing our food, sleeping in our sleeping bags. It smells disgusting all the time. The building is crashed, so the water from rain, for example, it always coming down on you, and it's very cold. So not many of war here, but it's very difficult, really. And also we have a kind of difficult things when the operation comes too intensive, when we have too much fire in a short time. For example, someone get injured or died, or too many enemies on 1 square kilometer, or many artillery. And even if you not walk too much and you meet so much defense from enemy, it's hard to break his defense. And when you when you get your losses in your division, and when you kill enemies all the time, and even in 1 hour, you becoming like just almost sleeping man who it's hard for brain, it's hard for nervous system. Too much war on a short time, I mean. So
Yeah.
I can these three things, like physically, like just in your normal life, like sleeping, eating, and this thing when they making these things spoiled, it's hard to live in these places. And just much more fight, much more fire, much more enemies. This is hard too. So like this.
Yeah, Matt, and I gotta say, I was watching that footage, and I don't think a lot of people, especially if they didn't grow up in the countryside, might not understand how exhausting it is to walk through mud. Like even like this much mud is going to be exhausting, but when it's like it was like knee deep. Like I think I said it looked like chocolate pudding, which is not like the best comparison when you're talking about like trenches and combat. But yeah, I can understand how quickly it's going to get exhausting, especially all that mud sticks to everything, makes it very hard to operate stuff, and it just makes everything a lot heavier. And even sometimes, like if you get too muddy, sometimes it's kind of hard to identify like who is who. But and then you're talking about the actual, you're just trying to sleep, you're just trying to eat, you're just trying to like maintain yourself, and it's difficult to do that. That's when it really starts getting mentally exhausting. And doing those sorts of operations, even over the course of a few days, a week, is going to feel like you've been doing it for a month. And again, I'm just talking about my field experience and my limited deployment experience. This, again, I think what you guys are going through is certainly on another level, especially like you were saying, when there's like the constant threat of fire, indirect fire, the artillery. And I mean, when I'm looking at it, I'm like, dang, these guys must be like desensitized, like used to all this artillery fire just because it's happening constantly and you guys are still just pushing through. Unless somebody gets hit, it's almost like ignored. Like, how would you say you guys deal with that constant threat of the artillery or the indirect fire? Because that's something different, something that I didn't have to experience myself.
Mm-hmm. You when you prepare into operation, it's stressed. When you move into operation in the techniques, in the machines, it's stressed. But when you coming out and starting to fight, starting to shooting, it's like just it's nervous, but it's kind of just mechanically movement. You don't think so much about this. Even our losses or someone injured, we think about this. We making help, giving him first aid or kind of this. But you're starting to thinking about it only after the war, after the battle. You're starting to realize in what just happened. And sometimes for me, for example, it could be even scary after the war when I remember what happened, when I looking up my videos and I understood what was there. So just in the battle, yeah, it's really kind of desensitized for many of us, but it's even though it's nervous all the time. And teaching our soldiers to, it's not like kind of a studying system how to deal with fear or kind of this, but it's about spirit in unit. When you see the same people who do the same thing, so even better, and they have no fear, as you see, they have no fear. Actually, it not so,
Right.
and it makes you do the same or even better. You're trying to be like them, and you don't want to be a coward or dishonored, because of this thing. So it's too very important. And actually about that, it's so much war on last year. So we just these thoughts about death just part of us. So sometimes it's even very important for us.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Something that we're taught in the Marine Corps pretty early on is something called the Cooper's Color Code. And it's basically like your mental awareness during combat. So white means like you're completely unaware. And then when you're talking about black, that's like when you're shell shocked. But in between that, there's something called like the gray space, which is basically like when your body is on autopilot. Like you're reacting to things, you're communicating, you're not necessarily aware of everything that you're doing or everything that's happening around you because you kind of get tunnel vision or focus on very specific things, mostly for survivability, especially if you're actively engaging somebody. So that's kind of where I can kind of draw my comparison. But it is like an autopilot. And a lot of times you do kind of end up just falling back on your training, especially if somebody gets injured. You understand you still need to engage the enemy, but you also need to get that guy off of that X, so to speak, and render that aid. But like you're saying, like when you have to actually move them the same distance that you moved out, that's when it becomes more of like a logistical thing. And that's when it comes up to the leader to understand, okay, how many guys do we have to work with and how's it looking right now? So it's a lot to assess. And I think what you're saying is important. Like you can't be exposed to that for too long. Now, with your background, I imagine it makes it a little bit easier. I wouldn't say natural. I don't think there's really a thing as natural leaders per se, especially when it comes to these sort of operations. But with your experience, it definitely helps out. Something that was kind of drawing my attention is people who have to volunteer to kind of defend, their homeland, defend their way of life. How has it been for other people in your platoon who haven't had that military experience previously, who are having to join and having to react to this very quickly? I mean, I imagine, of course, they're motivated just to defend their homeland, but how has it been otherwise to kind of adapt to that very quickly?
For all of us, one day is a start to this career. So before I was a new guy, and then if you want to teach, if you want to learn, if you want to learn too much about this thing, if you are interested to it, and if you want to defend, really fight, it's much more easier to study. I've seen people before during my service in airborne. Before I've seen people who during the 3 years they didn't study a lot. They just he could be a machine gun man or kind of it, and he knows thing about the machine gun, but. You cannot just pick him on a position of a commander just immediately. He don't know things about this. But here, when it comes to true war, many of us come here and ready to do everything, and they learning everything. They copy very fast, and it's much more easier, really. Even for me, I have more than 4 years of really serving in military and making fights. But many people who come here after me and they serve about half in a year, they have enough experience too to becoming a lower commander and then upper. I want to say that when it's war and when it's really important, then people can do much more than they think.
Yeah, absolutely.
The human can do much more than we think. So same situation to our soldiers, to me, for example, too. These things around us makes us grow up faster, and we have no choice. So the same situation for new guys.
Yeah, it's kind of out of necessity, a lot of it. I mean, having someone who is just like, I'm going to be the best machine gunner possible, and that's it. Those guys are helpful sometimes, but with a conflict like this, you will have to kind of move in and out of roles, every now and again. And yeah, you kind of need to be a little bit more well-rounded, I guess. And that's, again, where it comes to just being an adaptable leader. And like you're saying, I think they'll be fine, especially once they're actively engaged. They kind of understand, okay, I need to learn this because I saw that our guys were using it, and I'm probably going to be in a position to have to lead that. So it also helps, I imagine, having like the international forces. From your perspective, how has it been working with these international volunteers? Have you had a whole lot of exposure? And how does it work with your actual units, like the communication, understanding, like delegating certain tasks to each unit? How has it been working for y'all?
We have some international volunteers in Ukraine in this foreigner legion. But in our brigade, we trying to develop some system when we pick up the group, the platoon of international fighters, and we picking them into the company of Ukrainians. Okay. We try to connect with them using people like me who can talk more or less in English, and we using the people who knows English with the radio stations, and we trying to give them kind of missions and operations when they can act for themselves with less help from us, because it's easier for them to communicate with each other. Actually, you can imagine any system you want. If I meet some of foreigners here who wants to fight really, and that's not actually a problem for them, even with this language, they find the way how to communicate, how to do things they want. So for now, we see it like a group of foreigners in the company of Ukrainians, with some guys who can speak English. In future, it can be any way, but I'm sure it will work because I see some foreigners. It's not a problem for them and for us too.
Dang, okay. Yeah, I've worked with a few foreign militaries myself, and we've done that as well, like having a squad. We had like a squad of Romanian troops, and we put them in our Marine platoon. And like you're saying, like once you have a bunch of Marines online kind of assaulting an objective, they kind of understand what needs to be done. So that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's pretty cool to kind of take them under your organization or your hierarchy, because then they have at least some sort of support or somebody to say, hey, we need X, Y, and Z. Like, can you help us out with this? I think it also helps in general for communication, just to be able to kind of battle track where this international platoon is, but kind of giving them a task that they can do autonomously makes a lot of sense. And I think like when it comes to other conflicts, a lot of people are going to be looking at everything that you guys are developing and use that as an example, because again, this is like the most recent peer-to-peer conflict that we've seen. So there's going to be a lot of lessons learned for sure. Now, I guess talking a little bit more on the international volunteers or just support in general, how was it when the war kicked off and you saw all this support, all these international volunteers, all of this aid coming in? How was it for you guys? Are you guys like actively kind of seeing those effects? Are you feeling those effects?
When the war started, we had not very much of Western weapon. We just fight with this Soviet weapon, old technique, and it was very slow. You know, I just fight in the start. I fight in Kiev region, and we use these Soviet machines, and then some times passed, and then in half in a year on eastern front line, I have this M113. And
Okay.
I just
Nice.
wondering that's how it comes, but now we had this, and for sure, this help is very needed by us, because we have lost many of techniques and other systems like artillery, and many guys, good guys and good soldiers too. So now we need just something to maintain this war, and to win this war, we need even more. And yeah, I can see this Western help because I use some kind of Western weapon for myself. For example, this I don't know how it's in English. It calls the model of this weapon calls M320.
Oh, the
It's like
grenade launcher?
yeah, and
Yeah.
we have yeah, and it's good. Really, I liked it. And, we have many these tubes like anti-tank weapon from Europe, from USA too, from some countries, and I like them too. They really much more useful than Soviet weapon. And the Russians don't use actually tanks and techniques in front lines like they have done before, and it's hard to shoot the tank using this tube really. For example, you can use javelin, and it's easier because it has the distance of 2 kilometers. And when
Yeah,
you
right.
come to this tank in 300 meters, it's unreal for now.
Yeah,
But in start, it helped a lot. We destroyed many techniques.
nice.
So I'm glad of Western help. But if they can, we need some more.
Yeah, for sure. No, for sure. I think we've been seeing that. I was looking at the 2024 kind of congressional hearing or their recommendations for the military, and there was a lot more Ukraine support verbiage put into that. And I don't think that that will get denied. So I think here in 2024, we're going to be seeing a lot more support going from the US at least to Ukraine. And I'm sure all the other countries, yeah, I'm sure all the other countries are probably going to understand as well. You know, you guys still need that support. The 320, the grenade launcher, that thing is it's nice because you can use it as like a standalone system by itself, or you can actually mount it. We always had it mounted on our rifles, which made it very heavy.
You're right. We don't actually mount it on our AK because we have AK. I don't actually know how to mount an AK, but
Yeah.
we're just
Tape.
using this belt, and it's cool. We have also a Bulldog system. It's like this M320, but it has
Huh.
6 for grenades.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
Big revolver, you
Yeah,
know.
we had that
So
as well.
yeah, we shoot in
Nice.
using these things. We shoot all the time, even on distance like 30, 40 meters. On my last fight about months ago, we shoot about 2 or 3 enemies using this M320.
Mm,
And it was great. Also, we use Mini-Me. You can see it in some of our videos. I
yeah,
liked it because it's not very heavy, like our version of machine gun, the Soviet machine gun. It's not
correct.
heavy, and you can shoot much more than using AK. And on short distances, less than 100 meters, uh, it's very useful. So for
Yeah.
infantry, see many things which useful from the Western world, and I liked it.
The 320, yeah, that will be great, especially for like trenches. Whenever there's any, we call it defilade or any like dead space where you can't shoot it with a normal rifle, it's nice to have these grenades to be able to kind of get that into the trenches as well. And yeah, the mini-me is nice. You just need to take care of it, or else yeah, it jams.
M320, like you said, we make some distance back from enemy when we cannot use our drones and we cannot see what things is further. So we just coming some back about 50 meters and starting to shooting with this M320 on the front using
Right.
this kind of line of grenade and just
Yep.
shooting and coming. And our grenades make them lie on the ground or just die. And
Yep.
we can freely using this. So it really is
Yeah.
useful. And me, yeah, as you said.
Yeah, that's a strategy that we would use as well. And we kind of call it like exploiting it. So once you get like hit with a grenade that even if it didn't hit you, like the shrapnel didn't hit you, it's gonna suppress them. And then while they're kind of on the ground, like you're saying, it gives you some time to push up. So yeah, even if it's not necessarily for actually killing people, you can use it just to actually advance, which is pretty important, especially since it can take a while to actually advance. So something that I've been seeing in your videos is the morale is extremely high. And I don't know if of course it makes sense. You guys are defending Ukraine, you're defending your home, but it's I'm seeing a lot of the dark humor come up in a lot of these videos.
Ты что, подохуевший или что стоишь? Я куколку.
And I know that certainly helps, but I guess from your perspective, what has been kind of helpful in boosting this morale with the troops?
Um, someone's experience or someone's actions, like like someone do some things which we can call like hero things.
Yeah,
And
reputation.
when you have the man or just you can even know you can just don't know him, but
Yeah.
these things happens, and this honor to go forward, this honor to make fight after the battle, you remembering this thing and you know that you do right. I have a situation when in the battle it was very hard. I was stressed and I thought like I'm done. I thought that this day I'm over, but then the battle finished, we win, and then I thought that if I will be in another place, if I wasn't there, it wasn't in this battle, it will be just. It could be the worst thing I can imagine because being there is the
Mm,
best honor. and it helps to other soldiers when you can show them yourself or some other guy who telling them that I've been to many battles, and this is the best thing you can imagine in your life. So just come and do this.
Yeah.
And when it comes to many of them during short time, you just becoming, as you said, desensitized and started to jokes about this thing. Everyone jokes, everyone know that sometimes you can be those which jokes will be about you. I mean,
yeah. No, I think it's true. Having that leader who's had the experience, it's like, yeah, I've been through this shitty situation, this suck, but here I am, like I'm fine, I'm ready to do it again. That definitely means a lot. I know when I was kind of junior in the military, seeing those people, those leaders, those NCOs who are so willing to just go out and just put themselves in a shitty situation, it's like I had no real excuse not to do it myself. So it's kind of like a lead from the front mentality. You will have like some bosses or leaders who kind of, aren't really about it as much. And then it shows and you kind of feel that's in the formation. But having those leaders who are, totally content with pushing and kind of putting themselves out there, it really makes it a lot easier to kind of follow people like that. Kind of talking about the recording aspect of all this. I think this is a pretty interesting topic for a lot of people. So there's a lot of cameras that we're seeing. There's GoPros, there's drones. I mean, even sometimes you have like professional cameras kind of watching the fighters in the trenches. Like, how are you guys managing these cameras? Because when I was in, there was a lot of people, a lot of leadership didn't want us to have cameras. I guess in case we did something stupid, it wouldn't be on Facebook or something. But are you guys kind of like encouraging this? Are you kind of like, hey, this gets the word out, like it's a good thing to have a GoPro? How are you guys managing all of that?
Many of us uses cameras to record these videos, especially because of our memories. You can watch it in some times ago and then imagine like how it was good.
Yeah.
Also, we can analyze the information from video, especially when you can collect some different GoPros videos and see the battle from different corners, and you can show to other people who weren't in this battle. They can get some kind of this experience for them too. Also, we publish them only after some time, and actually it's not very much information for media or for world when you just storm in a trench or wood line.
Yeah.
But for one infantry guy or for those who were recording, this is useful information, and for our brigade too. So these cameras, we buy them for ourselves just because we want. And our media guys, they really join us in some battles when it's possible, and sometimes it comes they shoot picking the ammo to AK or some kind of this, or even give a first aid help sometimes like this. So they're like soldier with camera, but doing the same things, except maybe it's funny. They wanted to like it, I think.
That's badass. I mean, that's an interesting thing to have on your resume. Like you're a videographer, but you're here kind of loading up magazines, rendering aid at the same time. It's kind of like the most high stress videography you could actually do. Yeah, I think it's pretty important what you're saying with the GoPros. Like when you're actually in these sort of situations, you're not focusing on a lot. Like you're going to be focusing on a very small kind of window. You're not going to be hearing as much. You're not even going to be feeling as much either. So there's a lot of things that kind of just get cut out while you're actually doing it. And then once, you come back, you have that adrenaline dump. You can kind of look at the footage and be like, okay, damn, that was a lot closer than I expected. But it's kind of funny how your body does that, where it kind of shuts off some of this danger a little bit so you can kind of focus on what you're supposed to be doing. But yeah, being able to kind of show the troops, hey, this is what we did. These are our successes. These are some lessons learned potentially. Like, I think that's very, very valuable. That's something that we didn't get because when I joined, it was like 2012. Not as many GoPros, not as many cameras. People didn't understand them, so you didn't really have stuff like that. So you kind of just have those old montages on YouTube of people in Iraq and Afghanistan. Yeah, I think it's really cool and really interesting. Not only the kind of visual aspect of it, but also the intelligence aspect when you're talking about the drones themselves. Like being able to battle track real time is extremely important and very helpful as an infantryman to understand where the enemy is at, how they're reacting to what you're actually doing. So with those drones, how would you say those drones have kind of helped you kind of on the ground, but also after the fact and kind of understanding what the enemy is doing?
No, just during the battle, of course, we use them, and we use also Starlink and this kind of a batteries, and we stream these videos to our headquarter, and the headquarter has radio stations, and they connected to infantry directly. So we just correct them during the battle, and it's very useful, especially on a wide landscape without some trees or kind of this. We can helps our artillery, helps our infantry, and after the battle we or even not after the battle, or just using our intelligence with drones, we can understand where the enemy's logistic comes from, which place their troops comes, where they have things where they collect ammo or other things. So really drones is very useful, but we lost them too. The Russians lost them too, because you can just shoot it, but it's a rare situation. Sometimes there's this station of these machines, like radio stations with a sitting drone down. They use it. I don't know. It's in English actually. So this technique helps to broke the drone to make him plane down, and they use it all the time. We use kind of it from us, and the drones just crushing many per day. So we need more, and they cost money. I know the China sell it to us and to Russians too. It's a funny situation.
Makes sense.
Helps, yeah. Use it in battle. You can use it after battle to analyze the actions, and you can use it in intelligence things. Also, you can use it in training to imagine how it could be, and for training for men who become a pilot of a drone. So it's like this.
Yeah. No, I mean it's cool because like when you have things like artillery, you kind of have bracketing. So you understand, okay, that first round wasn't necessarily that close. I need to kind of push it. What we've been seeing with the drones is somebody will throw a grenade and they'll be like, hey, you have to throw that a little bit further, or you threw it too far, which is, it's crazy. I've never seen that sort of correction happen when it comes to a grenade, especially when they're like 20, 30 meters from each other. So that's interesting. As far as what you're saying, where you can identify this might be a command post, this is where their ammunition is. That's when you also kind of understand, let's target this area potentially, if we can, just to kind of eliminate their logistics or eliminate their leader. And I think that's very valuable as well. Of course, we've been seeing like the drones with the bombs as well. I imagine sometimes it's more as like, I guess, exploiting people who are out in the open, but also just for more strategic targets like, you know, the ammunition and stuff. Has that been like a big thing with y'all, like actually employing the drones with the bombs, or do you think it's more useful to employ the drones for reconnaissance and intelligence?
All things are useful. It's really drones flying up at the Europe, because you think that it's carrying the grenade and it's trying to do all the time. Sometimes I just showing them my middle finger to this drone and running. I have some situations like this, and they do these things. We do the same. So it's useful in any way. We can use these heavy drones with good bombs to bomb their vehicles, techniques, kind of this thing. But enemies has these drones too, their version of these drones, and it hurts. So you can use drones anyway, and I'm I'm sure that this is the way of future war, using many of drones. I don't actually like it really, because it's dangerous, like for us, like for them. But that's the things we have. So use drones anyway. It's good. We need more specific people who knows how to drive it, and I think. But anyway, being in infantry is the best thing.
Hell yeah. No, I agree with that. I think as an infantryman, you really want to focus on maneuvering your guys and controlling your guys, controlling where the enemy is and understanding that. So when you start getting all of this technology, sometimes it's really nice. Like if there's somebody just on the radio saying, hey, there's maybe like 3 guys 20 meters away from you, that's good to know. But when I'm kind of having to take myself out of the actual battle to either pay attention to this stuff, like because sometimes we'd have like the little flip phones and we would have to battle track for our commanders, it really takes you out of the fight. So sometimes it can be nice, but sometimes it can be a little bit annoying or kind of a detriment. So just getting to the bare roots of just being an infantryman, I think that's probably where I found myself most comfortable and kind of focusing on all of that. So outside of the drones, what would you say has been helpful? I guess besides the actual weaponry, have you guys been sent anything or have any donations come through where it's been like battery packs or anything else like that, medical gear? What else would you say has been pretty helpful for y'all?
Drones, sometimes just vehicles. Our cars crashed sometimes and very often even. These battery things, also this night vision and thermovision. We have some of them, but sometimes we need more. For example, for groups who work at night, we use these laser things on our weapon and night vision for small groups, and we act like this. So sometimes we have donations for these things, and we even make our own technique, our own weapon using the trophy from Russian and using the old Soviet weapon. We use the guys who know how to collect it in one thing, and we pay them money, and they just made the ultra weapon for us, like kind of old trash and some old weapon. And we using our money for this thing too. Also, we use many Kevlar defensive because they show themselves very good. Sometimes we just putting out from our armor many these pieces of ammo, pieces of mortars, mines. So we use this Kevlar defense for our neck, for our arms, and sometimes for legs. We buying them too, so some of donations comes for these things, and every day, every month, it comes a different situation on the front line, and for us too. So we finding out another way where we should put our money, and we collect some donations for these things. For every unit and for every front line, it's maybe different, but everyone needed it.
Okay, understandable. Yeah, I think what you're saying, night vision and thermal capabilities really are a game changer. Even if you're not necessarily like owning the night, as they say, if you have that capability and they understand that, then they're going to be a lot less likely to try and push operations, especially at night. But being able to observe that, being able to observe any sort of troop movement, especially with thermals, is super helpful. I know we've been seeing some of the drones who had the thermal capabilities, and that has been like super nice. I mean, just watching it is kind of cool, but I'm sure for the guys on the ground, it's been pretty helpful as well. Yeah, and then when you're talking about like other equipment, I think it's important to understand like a lot of people don't necessarily need to be donating a huge amount of stuff. It can be smaller stuff, kind of like you're saying when it comes to batteries. Batteries or battery power, even like solar panels, are always going to be a nice thing to have. But body armor, I can understand that. I didn't consider like when you're talking about the little pieces of fragment getting stuck in it, because the only time I would employ body armor is usually in like a CQB environment where I'm only expecting like bullets to be impacting it. But you know, trying to trim off as much padding as possible is what I've been doing. But I understand it would be pretty detrimental to have only, this protected, especially for you guys when there's the threat of grenades and indirect fire. So yeah, I don't know. I know a lot of infantrymen in the US would try and minimize that as much as possible. But now that you're saying that, it makes me reconsider kind of where to have padding and how much padding to actually have. And of course, like if a plate gets shredded up, you're going to want to replace it just so, you can kind of rely on it a little bit more. Okay, and I know a lot of donations are coming in. I'm trying to do my part a little bit more as far as like all my Patreon donations are going to be going to some funds, mostly for body armor. There's a company out there that'll take those donations and use that to supply some body armor to the fighters. So as far as other things that people can do, what would be helpful besides donations, besides just like, I guess getting the message out there is also kind of helpful. And it's nice for me to have this YouTube channel just to be able to kind of have that platform to do that as well. But what else would be helpful for you guys, even if it's not like necessarily a donation or money?
For our country, for example, it will be helpful if all our people become mobilized to war, because the war is hard and it's long. So we need to be. It should be like total war, really, because you can win the war if it's small war for a small part of the region, but when it comes to the whole country, not only soldiers should do these things, and the whole country should work on war or being at war. This is for us. For foreigners, for example, yeah, as I said, the nations, as they want, if they want, they can join us. Soon we open in our recruiting center for foreigners. I left a link after this. My friends sent me this. They can join us. And maybe these media things, as you said, you have a YouTube channel and you discussing this problem. That's very good. It's good for people abroad to know about this situation, to know the war maintains. It's hard, and what we're doing our best. And I think it's useful for the whole world, Ukraine to win. And we're doing this thing for ourselves. We just need some help. So if this thing will sounds in YouTube or other media, it will be helpful for Ukraine too. So I think that's it.
No, I think what you said is very important too, like the total war aspect of it. Like the country is at war, so therefore everybody should kind of focus their efforts on that. I mean, and this is more of an extreme example when it comes to like World War II. The whole country is kind of devoting its efforts, shifting all this manpower and manufacturing to the war effort. So I haven't considered it from that perspective, and kind of looking at the map and kind of understanding where the conflict's actually happening. There are a lot of parts of Ukraine that aren't directly affected by combat, but it's kind of interesting to think of them trying to mobilize these efforts to support that as well. Yeah, again, like a lot of fighters, at least a lot of like my buddies who are prior Marines, prior soldiers, they've been asking me like, hey, do you have any connections on how to go and volunteer for this war effort? So if you guys are opening your recruiting stations for that, that's going to be pretty cool, because there's a lot of Marines, a lot of soldiers, a lot of infantrymen who serve in the U.S. military, and they might not necessarily deploy, or they didn't have the deployments that they kind of expected or wanted. So now they still have that urge because they have that warrior mindset, and they see this need out there for fighters who have that experience. So there's definitely a lot of people that I know, at least, who are considering going over there, and they've been trying, to be honest. They just need an easier way to actually facilitate this or get it going. So that's a pretty interesting thing. So that'd be cool to check out as well. I guess from my perspective as well, do you have like any questions on the U.S. side of the house as far as differences or comparisons, anything like that?
For you're saying for the whole Western world, the last big war was the World War II. So we have different experience. On the Middle East, war looks like the war with infantry, with enemies' infantry, often without a heavy weapon. And as you said, it's often like clearing the buildings or kind of this thing. And always the NATO countries has the artillery systems and other heavy weapons, and the enemies have not enough of it. And now
Right.
here in Ukraine, we have the opposite situation when the Russia has much more than we have. So we trying to fight vice versa, like it was in NATO. But so much experience comes from this, and the main difference is that you should use much more people, for example, to make some operations. Because as I know in NATO systems and in the USA, it's many staff who don't actually take part in war, but they work in military.
Right.
Here have the most part is those who storming the infantry, because we have not enough people and not enough actually things to do except just being in infantry.
Right.
And about the weapon, as I said, we cannot always think about our help, our cover from planes or artillery systems. We just often we just should act for ourselves, like just a unit from 8-10 people who have their AK and some grenades, and that's it. And we know that it could be. I think that in Western countries, you always know that you have some cover, some help, or some other things. I think so. So this is
Yeah.
the big difference. You should think a different way, because you know that you can die if you will not work as hard as it needed, and you have no opportunity to call someone who comes and save you, like a helicopter who evacuate injured people.
Yeah.
It's a fantasy, because now they just shooting all the time these helicopters, and we shoot their helicopters too. Very hard to use. So
Yeah.
this evacuation looks like in this video when we just pushing our friend many kilometers forward and things like this. So this is the difference.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think a lot of people did kind of get spoiled because you think of like Afghanistan specifically is where kind of my experience is kind of going off of. But you have this close air support that's usually available. And when it's not, it becomes very problematic because like you're saying, it becomes an issue of who has more and who's using the terrain a little bit better. So having that thing in the back of your mind, like if this gets really bad, I have this at my disposal. That means a lot. But I think it's very important as an infantryman to train, like, let me just train with the idea that I don't have any of this stuff and I'll be much better off. I know generally we try and have like a 3-to-1 ratio of, you have 3 more guys than they do, but it's not always going to be like that as well. So it's important to remember these things and kind of base your training off of that, especially when it comes to casualties, like you're saying. We do it every now and again where you'll implement like medical training, but people also don't understand like how much, if someone is down, it takes, 2 guys out of the fight, really at a minimum, to be able to move them and treat them and everything. So it's a lot to consider. It's a lot to manage. And when you don't have these resources available, you really do have to shift your focus up. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot more doctrinal changes based off of kind of what you guys are going through as far as how to rely on certain things, how to implement certain things. And again, like just having a helicopter at your disposal to be able to call in and get somebody, that's nice to kind of, solve that issue a little bit quicker. But it's not going to be realistic, especially when it comes to like all out war where you don't have that air support, you don't have that air superiority. And even when there's more domains coming into effect, you're not going to even be able to use your radios. So having like a backup to the backup and actually training on that is definitely going to be important. So yeah, from my side, I think it's been pretty interesting to kind of analyze and assess that and see how our doctrinal training probably wouldn't work in a lot of the circumstances that you guys are having to deal with. So, and I think a lot of people can kind of appreciate that. So I'm definitely going to be trying to do more of these Ukrainian combat footage reactions because I think a lot of people are invested in that, in sort of seeing what you guys are dealing with and seeing how it kind of compares to, you know, the American might, as a lot of people like to think. But again, it's like you need to stay modern, and you need to be able to kind of see what other people are dealing with and what they're working with. Otherwise, you know, you're gonna have a hard time when it actually comes to, you know, this larger scale conflict. Again, I just want to say thanks for what you guys are doing. It's just some of the most badass stuff. Even like right when the war kicked off, everybody that I knew in the military was talking about the Ukrainian fighters, talking about, you know, how impressed they were with the tactics, especially with what you guys had initially. You didn't have a whole lot, and you guys were just doing the most badass stuff. And it's not just, you know, general combat operations. It's like the individual actions that we're seeing, the professionalism, the maturity, the communication, just the aggression it's awesome to watch. And I know a lot of people in the US military are just following this on a day-to-day, but I'm sure people around the world are all following this. So all the eyes are kind of on you guys. So yeah, I just keep it up. You guys are doing a great job. And yeah, let's keep giving Russia a hard time.
Thanks for this opportunity to talk. And thanks everyone who fight for Ukraine and who support Ukraine. So if you join us, you can join. And goodbye. See you.
Yeah.